So these questions are kind of lengthy, so I think we're just going to stick with doing the odds in class. If we have time to do the evens, or if you have a question about the evens, I'll do those too. But let's just do the odds first. So number 1, what goes on the outside? Thank you, Gabby. X plus 8. Now before we put the big one on the inside, we just have to make sure we have all of our terms. So we have x cubed, x squared, just x, and a number. So we're good. We got 3, 2, 1, 0. So we can put all of those in here. So 7x cubed plus 52x squared minus 39x minus 62. Now we need to ask ourselves, what times x gives us 7x cubed? 7x squared. So we put that on top of the x squared term. Another way we could think about it is we divide whatever this term is, so 7x cubed, by x. So we just divide it by what's on the outside. So we divide, and then we multiply what's up top with what's out front. So what is 7x squared times x? 7x cubed. We'll always get the same thing. That's our goal. And then what's 7x squared times 8? 56x squared. Perfect. What do we have to do next? Change the signs. Don't forget to change the signs. So they both become negative. And we add them together. So what happens to the 7x cubes? Cancel. And then what is 52x squared minus 56x squared? Negative 4x squared. Now we do the same thing. We can either ask ourselves, what times x gives us negative 4x squared, or we can just divide by x. So divide this by x. What is negative 4x squared divided by x? Negative 4x. What do we do next? Awesome, we got to multiply it to everything on the outside. So what's negative 4x times x? Negative 4x squared. And then what's negative 4x times 8? Negative 32x. What do we have to do next? We can bring down the negative 39, but what else do we have to do? Change the signs. Don't forget to change the signs. So this becomes a plus and a plus. So what happens to the 4x squareds? Cancel. And then what's negative 39x plus 32x? Negative 7x. So again, we can divide. X, negative 7x divided by x would give us what? Negative 7. Then once we put a number up top, we multiply it to the outside. So what is negative 7 times x? Negative 7x. It'll always give us that thing right above it, so perfect. What's negative 7 times 8? Negative 56. So then what do we have to do next? Change the signs. Bring down the negative 62. What happens to the 7x's? Cancel. What's negative 62 plus 52? 56. Negative 6. What do we do next? Awesome. Negative 6 is our remainder. And this is our answer. So it is a lot of steps. It's a lot of work, but it's just the same thing over and over again. So once you get the hang of it, it becomes a lot easier. So you just divide, write it up top, multiply, write it down below. So it's like a circle. Just do the same thing over and over. Ready for the next one? Let's look at number 3. So what goes on the outside? A minus 2. I'm just going to change all of these to x's just because I like x's better. But the variable doesn't matter, whether you have it in a's or x's. I just like to do x's because I'll forget to write an a and just write an x on accident, so I'm just going to leave it in x's. Do we have all of our terms here? We have cubed, squared, just a regular x, and a number. So are we missing anything? No. Nope. So we're good to write it all in our box. So x cubed plus x squared plus 2x minus 10. Where do we start? What times x gives us x cubed? X squared. What do we do once we write a number up top? Multiply it to everything out front. So what's x squared times x? X cubed. And then what's x squared times negative 2? Negative 2x squared. What do we do next? Change the signs. So make this a plus and a plus. And then add them together. Oh no, this was a negative. Make this a negative and a plus. Then add them together. These are always going to cancel out, so you want to make sure that they're opposite signs. Add x squared plus 2x squared, which gives us 3x squared. What's next? Put 3x on the top, so we ask ourselves what times x gives us 3x squared. That would be 3x, so we write it on top, and then we multiply. So what's 3x times x? 3x squared. And what's 3x times negative 2? Negative 6x. What do we do next? Change signs and drop the 2x. And add them together. So what happens to the 3x squareds? Cancel. What is 2x plus 6? 8x. What's next? What times x gives us 8x? That would be a positive 8. And then we multiply 8 by everything out front. So what's 8 times x? 8x. And what's 8 times negative 2? Negative 16x. What do we have to do next? Drop the negative 10. What else do we have to do? Change the signs. Don't forget to change the signs. What happens to the 8x's? Cancel. What is negative 10 plus 16? So it's like 16 minus 10. 6. What do we do with that 6? That's our remainder. So this is our answer. X squared plus 3x plus 8, remainder 6. So just remember, if you keep yourself organized, all of your x squareds are going to line up. All of your x's are going to line up. All of your constants are going to line up. So that kind of gives you a hint on what's going to come next. So just be organized. Keep it all in line. All right, next. All right, number 2. So what goes outside the box? So k plus 4, I'm just going to change these all to x's because I like working with x's better, just because I'll forget halfway through the problem and make them x's anyway, so I'm just going to change them all to x's now. Remember, we always want to have every term represented inside the box. So if we start with cubed, that means we need to have squared. Do we have a squared term here? Nope. So we need to put a squared term where it's consistent. So if we have an x cubed, then we need the x squared. So it just has to be in order. So we're going to put 0x squared there, and then we have an x and a constant. So that's all we need to add. So we have x cubed plus 0x squared minus 16x minus 1. So now we need to ask ourselves, what times x gives us x cubed? So we just divide x cubed by x. What do we get when we divide x cubed by x? X squared. So we put that on top. What do we do once we write a number on top?
You multiply it by the numbers that are outside.
Multiply it by everything outside. So what's x squared times x?
X cubed.
X cubed. We're always going to get the same thing here. So if you get something different, you know you picked the wrong number. So you're always going to get the same thing because those are always going to cancel. And then what's x squared times 4?
4x squared.
4x squared. What do we have to do next?
Change the sign.
Change the sign. So this becomes negative and this becomes negative. What's next? We add the two rows together. So what's x cubed minus x cubed? What happens here?
They cancel.
Cancels. And then what's 0x squared minus 4x squared? Negative 4x squared. Now we do it again. We divide negative 4x squared by x. What do we get? Negative 4x. What's next? After we write it on the top, we multiply it by everything outside. So what's negative 4x times x? Negative 4x squared. Again, we got the same thing, so we know we did it right. And then what's negative 4x times 4?
Negative 16.
Negative 16x. What should we do next?
Do you change the sign?
Change the sign, so this becomes a plus, and this becomes a plus. And then we add them together. So what happens to the 4x squareds?
They eliminate.
They cancel out. What do we do with that plus 16x?
Do you bring it to the top?
So we bring the negative 16x down and combine these two together. What's negative 16x plus 16x? They cancel out. So then we're just left with 0. What times x gives us 0? 0. So I'm going to write a 0 up top just to hold my place there. And then do the same thing again. So I want to multiply 0 times everything out front. So what's 0 times x? 0, and 0 times 4? 0. We would change the signs, but negative 0 is the same thing as 0. And bring down this negative 1. So add these together, they cancel. What is negative 1 plus 0? Negative 1. What do we do with that negative 1? We ran out of space to go here. Amandine, what did you say?
Never mind.
We don't change the sign. We ran out of space. What happens when we run out of space?
That's the remainder.
That's the remainder. Thank you. So our remainder is negative 1. So our answer would be x squared minus 4x remainder negative 1. We don't have to write the 0 in our answer. The 0 is just there to hold our place. For these, you just do the same pattern over and over again. It's just the same 3 steps in a row. Just have to do it again and again and again. So if you don't put the 0 there, it's kind of easy to like skip steps in the pattern and kind of get lost. So I would put the 0s here. So you don't have to, but it helps just to hold your place. That way you keep going with the same pattern. Any questions here? All right, let's do number 4. What goes on the outside? M minus 6. I'm going to change them to x's, but it doesn't matter if you want to work with m's, totally fine. And then before we write the long one inside the box, we just have to make sure all of our terms are there. So we start with cubed, then we have squared, then we have just an m, and then we have no m. So we're good. So in our box, we have m cubed minus 14m squared plus 42m plus 31. Oops, I changed it to x. So let's change these m's to x's. So x, x, and x. All right, what times x gives us x cubed?
X squared.
X squared. What do we do once we write something on top?
Multiply by everything on both sides.
Multiply it by everything on the outside, so it's x squared times x.
X cubed.
X cubed, what's x squared times negative 6?
Negative 6x squared.
Negative 6x squared. What do we have to do next?
Change the sign.
Change the sign, change the sign. And then add them together. What happens to our x cubes?
They cancel too.
Cancel. What's negative 14x squared plus 6x squared? Negative 8x squared. Now we start from the top. Do the same thing again. What times x gives us negative 8x squared? So we're dividing this by x. What do we get? Negative 8x. So what do we do once we write something on top?
Multiply.
Multiply it by everything outside. So it's negative 8x times x.
Negative 8x squared.
Negative 8x squared. What's negative 8x times negative 6? $48x. What do we do next? Change the signs. Change the signs. Add them together. What happens to our 8x squareds? Cancel. What are we combining with that negative 48x?
The 42x.
The 42x. So it's 42x minus 48x.
Negative 6.
Negative 6x. So again, what times x gives us negative 6x? So we divide. Negative 6. Oops. What do we do next?
Multiply by everything outside.
Multiply it to everything outside. So it's negative 6 times x.
Negative 6x.
And then what's negative 6 times negative 6?
Positive 36.
Positive 36. What do we do next? Change the signs. Got to change the signs first, and then they cancel out. What do we combine with that negative 36?
The 31.
The 31. So what's 31 minus 36?
5.
Negative 5. What do we do with that negative 5?
That's our remainder.
That's our remainder. So our remainder is negative 5. This is our answer. Yep. So a little helpful hint for all of these, not really a helpful hint, but all of your terms are going to be lined up. So see how all of these are x squared terms? All of these are x terms. All of these are constants. They all line up. So you kind of know what's going to come next if you keep them in an organized order, because it's always going to work out that way. After your constant number here, so once you get this number, anything after that is the remainder. So if you get a constant, you're not going to have anything after, so it's just the remainder, whatever's left over. Number 5. What goes on the outside? V plus 4. I'm just going to change them all to x's again. So x plus 4 on the outside. Now, before we write our polynomial on the inside, we have to make sure all of our terms are represented. So we have a cubed, a squared. Do we have the v all by itself? No. So we need to put in here a 0 v, or 0x. And then we have a number, so we're good there. So we have x cubed plus 4x squared plus 0x plus 7. So now we ask ourselves, what times x gives us x cubed? X squared. So we put our x squared on top of the x squared column. And then what do we do? Multiply by everything outside. So what's x squared times x? X cubed. And what's x squared times 4? 4x squared. What do we do next? Change the signs. Change the signs. What happens to the x cubes? Cancel. What is 4x squared minus 4x squared? They cancel. So we're left with 0 here. So what do you think we can multiply to x to give us 0? 0. So we want to put that 0 on top just as a placeholder. And then we multiply 0 times everything outside, so we keep the same pattern. What's 0 times x? 0, and 0 times 4 is 0. We drop down this 0. What's 0 plus 0? 0. We do the same thing again. So what times x gives us 0? 0. And then multiply 0 times x, 0 times 4, drop down the 7. So it may seem silly to write all these zeros, but it just helps you keep that same pattern, because eventually you'll start back up with numbers again. So you want to just know what comes next. Keep those zeros in as a placeholder. Can we multiply anything by x to give us 7? Nope. So what do we do with that 7? That's our remainder. So our remainder is 7. So our answer is just x squared, remainder 7. We don't have to write the zeros in our answer, but it's just there up top as our placeholders, and in the problem as our placeholders. Let's look at number 7. What goes on the outside? x plus 4. Before we write what goes on the inside, we want to make sure all of our terms are there. Are all of our terms there? We have a cubed, squared, just a v, and then a number. So are we good to start? Yep. So we just rewrite that on the inside of our box. Don't have to add anything special. So we have x cubed plus 10x squared plus 31x plus 29. So what times x gives us x cubed? So awesome, x squared. Then what do we do next? Multiply. So what's x squared times x? X cubed. And what's x squared times 4? 4x squared. What do we have to do next? Change the signs and add them together. What happens to our x cubes? They cancel. What is 10x squared minus 4x squared? 6x squared. So what times x gives us 6x squared? 6x. What do we do next? Multiply. So it's 6x times x. 6x squared. We got the same thing, so we know we did it right. What's 6x times 4? 24x. What do we have to do next? Change the signs, and bring down the 31x. So what's 6x squared minus 6x squared? They cancel. And what's 31x minus 24x? 7x. What do we do next? Awesome. What times x gives us 7x? That would be 7. What do we do next? Multiply. So 7 times x? 7x. And 7 times 4? 28. What's next? Change the sign. What happens to the 7x's? Cancel. What's 29 minus 28? 1. What do we do with that 1? That's our remainder. So this is our answer. So again, all of our x squareds are lined up. All of our x terms are lined up. All of our constants are lined up. So you want to be as neat and organized as possible. Keep everything organized, and it's just the same pattern over and over. So instead of 9, we're going to do 10. All right, what goes on the outside? K minus 7. I'm just going to change it to x minus 7. Same thing. So x minus 7. Before we write the big one on the inside, we got to make sure all of our terms are there. So we start with cubed, then squared, then k all by itself, and then a number. So we don't have to add anything. We're good to go. So let's just rewrite it in our box. We have x cubed plus x squared minus 51x minus 33. So where do we start? So what times x gives us x cubed? X squared. Then what do we do? Multiply it by both things outside. So what's x squared times x? X cubed. And what's x squared times negative 7? Negative 7x squared. Again, if you keep everything in line, it kind of hints on what is going to come next. What do we have to do next? Change the signs. So it becomes a negative and a positive. So our x cubes cancel. What is x squared minus, or that became a plus, right? Yeah, this is a plus. So what's x squared plus 7x squared? So remember, this is like a 1x squared. What's 1 plus 7? 8x squared. What do we do next? We can, but we don't have to yet. We need a number up top. What's going to go up top next? What times x gives us 8x squared? 8k, or 8x. Then we multiply. What's 8x times x? 8x squared. And what's 8x times negative 7? Negative 56x. What do we do next? Change the signs. Negative and positive. What happens to the 8x squareds? Cancel. What's negative 51x plus 56x? Five x. So what times x gives us 5x? 5. Once we write a number up top, what do we do next? Multiply to both things outside. So what's 5 times x? 5x. And what's 5 times negative 7? Negative 40. Negative 35? Yep. What do we do next? We can drop the negative 33. What else do we have to do? Change the signs. Don't forget, change the signs. So what happens to the 5x's? Cancel. What's negative 33 plus 35? 2. What do we do with the 2? That's our remainder. So this is our answer. So what goes on the outside? X plus 6. What goes on the inside? Are we missing any terms? Nope, we have cubed, squared, 1x, and none. So we're good to go. What times x gives us 7x cubed? 7x squared. What do we do next? Multiply it by everything outside. So 7x squared times x. So this would be 7x cubed. And what's 7x squared times 6? 42x squared. What do we do next? Change the signs, change the signs. What happens to our 7x cubes?
They cancel.
They cancel. What's 48x squared minus 42x squared?
6x squared.
6x squared. So we got to keep it in order so we know it's going to be x squared also. So then what do we do next?
Bring the 6x to the top.
Awesome. So what times x gives us 6x squared? That would be 6x. What do we do once we write the number up top?
Multiply by everything outside.
Multiply by everything outside. So 6x times x is 6x squared. What's 6x times 6? 36x. What do we do next? Change a sign. Change a sign. Add them together. What happens to our 6x squareds?
They cancel.
Cancel. What are we combining with that negative 36x? 34. What's 34x minus 36x? Negative 2x. Then we do it again. What times x gives us negative 2x? Negative 2. Then we multiply. What's negative 2 times x? Negative 2x. And what's negative 2 times 6? Negative 12. What do we do next? Change the sign, change the sign. Add them together. What's negative 2x plus 2x? They cancel. What do we do with the positive 12? Combine it with the negative 20. What's negative 20 plus 12? Negative 8. What do we do next? That's our remainder. Good job. So this is our answer. All right, number 8. Almost done, guys. What goes outside the box?
X plus 5.
X plus 5. Are we missing any terms here to go inside the box? We have cubed, squared, single x, and none. So we're not missing anything. So 7x cubed plus 42x squared plus 34x minus 6. What do we do first?
Fill out the 7x cubed.
So what times x gives us 7x cubed? 7x squared. After we write it on top, what do we do?
Multiply by everything else.
Awesome. So 7x squared times x is 7x cubed. What's 7x squared times 5? 35x squared. What do we do next?
Change the sign.
Change the sign, change the sign. What happens to our 7x cubes?
They cancel.
They cancel. What's 42x squared minus 35x squared?
7x squared.
7x squared. What do we do next? What times x gives us 7x squared? 7x. Once we write it on top, what do we do? Multiply it to everything outside. So it's 7x times x. And what's 7x times 5? 35x. What do we do next? Change the sign, change the sign. Add them together. What happens to our 7x squareds? Cancel. What's 34x minus 35x? Negative x. Awesome. So what is negative x divided by x? Not x. So the x's cancel, and then what are we left with? What is it? Not 0, because we still have that negative. If we had, let's say, 5 over 5, what does 5 over 5 simplify to? 1. So if this was negative 5 over 5, what does negative 5 over 5 simplify to? Negative 1. So this would be negative 1. So we put that negative 1 up top. So negative 1 times x is what? So we're multiplying. Negative 1 times x? Negative x. And negative 1 times 5? Negative 5. What do we do next? Change the sign, change the sign. Add them together. What happens to our x's? They cancel. And then what is negative 6 plus 5? Negative 1. What do we do with that negative 1? That's our remainder. So our answer is 7x squared plus 7x minus 1, remainder, negative 1. Any questions? All right, what goes on the outside? N plus 1. I'm just going to change these all to x's, just because I like x's better. But the same thing, if you have n's, totally fine. So I'm just going to change all of them to x's. We have x cubed, x squared, just a single x, and no x. So all of our terms are here, so we're good to go. So we just rewrite it in our box. 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x minus 4. So what times x gives us 2x cubed? 2x squared. What do we do with that 2x squared? Multiply to everything on the outside. So it's 2x squared times x. 2x cubed. What's 2x squared times 1? 2x squared. What do we do next? Change the sign, change the sign. Add them together. What happens to our 2x cubes? Cancel. What is 3x squared minus 2x squared? So 3 minus 2 is what? 1. So this would just be x squared. So now we need to ask ourselves, what times x gives us x squared? So we're dividing this by x. What's x squared divided by x? Just x. Then we multiply. What's x times x? X squared. And what's x times 1? X. What do we have to do next? Change sign, change sign. What's x squared minus x squared? They cancel. What's negative 6x minus x? Awesome, negative 7x. Now from the top, what times x gives us negative 7x? So we're dividing this by x. Awesome, negative 7. Once we write a number up top, what do? Multiply it times everything outside. So what's negative 7 times x? Negative 7x. And what's negative 7 times 1? Negative 7. What do we do next? Change sign, change sign. Add them together. What's negative 7x plus 7x? They cancel. What do we do with that positive 7? Awesome. What's negative 4 plus 7? 3. What do we do with the 3?
Just the remainder.
That's our remainder. So our answer is 2x squared plus x minus 7, remainder 3. Or if you had n's, it would be 2n squared plus n minus 7, remainder 3. Any questions?